Hey guys, I'm Coach Sal. Today we are going to be teaching a conventional deadlifter how to sumo deadlift. I'm here with one of my lifters, Katya. And Katya is a conventional deadlifter, a very strong conventional deadlifter. What are you pulling these days?
So right now I've been stuck at 395, but the goal is to hit 4 plates.
Okay, so we're shooting for 405. The thing is, every now and then Katya's low back flares up. So we're going to be experimenting this block with sumo deadlift and see if one, it can kind of help us train through the low back issues, and two, if it's potentially a stronger position for her. Now here's the issue with conventional deadlifters. Transitioning into sumo, a lot of times you're trying to apply cues that work really, really well for conventional to the sumo deadlift, and then it just makes things all funky. Fortunately, I can do both. I think my best conventional deadlift, and this was like years ago, was like maybe 565, and then my best sumo deadlift has been 635 at like 175 pound body weight. So I kind of know what I'm doing on both, and that's what this video is going to show. We're going to start by seeing what Katya is doing on the sumo deadlift. We're going to point those things out, and then we're going to see if we can correct them, get her comfortable with the movement. I think we had technique breakdown at, what was it, 185? Mm-hmm. Okay, so we have technique breakdown around 185, so we're going to see what 135 looks like to start. And that's good there. All right, so a few things that I'm seeing that we would want to try to correct right off the bat is right now your hand placement is fairly narrow for you, which is your full hand is on the smooth portion of the bar, okay? What we're going to want to see is, and if you're holding your hands in, if you feel like your hands are kind of going diagonally in, you probably want to straighten them out until they're parallel to one another and perpendicular to the floor, okay? So this will probably put you in a position where you have two, maybe 3 fingers on the smooth portion of the bar. Mm-hmm. Myself, I typically pull with 2 fingers on the knurling and 2 fingers on the smooth portion of the bar. So I'm going to be here. So that's going to be the first thing we're going to want to adjust for Katya sumo deadlift, is to kind of bring that grip out a little bit. And that's very, very common for conventional deadlifters when they start. They're used to being here, but for some reason when they bring their hands out, they can feel their forearms hitting their knees, and so they overcompensate by bringing their hands a little bit too far in, right? So if she started with conventional deadlift here, she thought sumo was here, and so she had to adjust. Well, the issue that we have here is probably her stance is a little too narrow, right? That's why she's feeling like she needs to bring her hands in. So one, we need to bring the hands out. 2, we're going to widen the stance just a little bit. So go ahead and take that sumo stance that you have.
Okay.
Now I want you to pull your hands straight out, and I want you to just follow me. You're going to squat as if you're building a house with your legs. Now, pause there, hold that position. If we notice here, her knees have kind of driven forward, but the shin is still at an angle. We want the shin to be more or less perpendicular to the ground. Go ahead and stand up, because I know that sucks. So when we're in that sumo position, Katya is currently coming here. We want to open the hips. So we're going to widen the stance. We want to open the hips, and we actually want to sit a little bit on the outside of our foot here, kind of going into the heel, with a slightly wider stance. So the front of the toe, your toe will be pointing to the front of the plate, a slightly wider stance, and you're kind of sitting the weight on the outside of your foot. So we'll be here instead of here. Notice my hips are kind of coming in here. I want to open those hips up. I'm shooting for my shins to be perpendicular to the ground and parallel to one another. That's going to open up my hips to allow my hands to fall in the spot that I'm looking for. So let's go back into this. We're going to take a slightly wider stance. When you're sitting into that position, remember, the weight is kind of coming to the outside of the foot, and the toe should be pointing to the front of the plate.
Okay. So like that.
That's good.
And then
Sitting to the outside of the foot.
like that?
Yeah, see, so now we're already in a stronger position. You see how immediately when you grab the bar, you were able to pull some slack out of it.
Yeah.
So now from this position, pull. Good. And you see how you're a little more upright. Do you feel that in your quads?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, no, I feel it, yeah. I would say like in the quads, and then like also the glutes a lot right now.
You feel the glutes a lot. Good, good. Good. Does this feel a little more comfortable than when we initially did it, right?
Yes, it does.
Okay,
yeah.
great. So Katya is an anomaly insofar as Oftentimes what you'll see with conventional deadlifters when they're pulling sumo is with a conventional deadlift, you typically want to set your back. So conventional deadlifters are pulling their chest up, pushing their belly down, and tightening their lats to get the slack out of the bar. Oftentimes what I'll see when a conventional deadlifter is attempting to pull sumo is they try to do that same thing with the bar. They're pushing their belly down, lifting their chest up. You don't actually want to do that with the sumo position. Instead, what you're trying to do is, instead of lifting your chest and arching, like putting your low back into extension, you're pushing your hips forward. So we're not doing this to get the slack out. We're doing this. So we're not doing this. We're doing this. Notice I'm pulling back and pushing my hips into the bar. As I do that, I'll feel the slack. You hear those clicks. That's the slack in the bar. I'll feel that slack pull out, and then I can just drive through my legs as I stand up. Let's try it again, and let's go for 6.
Okay.
2 fingers on the smooth. Push the hips forward and extend. Good. Hips. Good. Hips. Good. Good. Good.
I lost count.
Yeah, that's fine. That's why power lifters don't go more than 3 reps on most things. It's really hard for us to count. So we've made a couple of adjustments with that 135. We're gonna go to 185. This is when she felt her technique break down a bit. Here's the thing with learning like technique on any given or new movement is when it's light, you can probably do it correctly. As it gets heavier, your technique is going to break down, and that's just because you haven't really ingrained those movement patterns in. There's certain muscles there that haven't developed appropriately yet. So we're going to 185, and we're going to see what the technique looks like at 185. Let's go for 6 reps.
1, 2, 3.
Can I do underhand or no?
Yeah.
4, 5, 6.
Great. So those looked awesome. I feel like of that set, which of those 6 reps, which rep do you feel like was your best rep?
I would say like maybe the second or third one.
You think the second rep? I think the 5th one. That's what I was holding up 5.
Okay.
How did the 5th one feel?
Fifth one felt pretty good. Was that the one when I? Okay, yeah.
Yeah. So one thing that you may have noticed with Katya, and this is what we'll kind of work on for these volume sets, is you're kind of losing slack at the bottom. So every rep, you're pulling. When it comes down, you're kind of dropping your hips back again, and only to have to like bring them back up. So when you're coming down, I really want you to focus on a slow descent. Barely allow that bar to touch, right? It's a very light touch. You're going to pause as it touches, but that way you can get used to where your hips need to be in that optimal position, okay? Because you don't always want to start too low, and then you're yanking it up, and then your hips shoot. You want to start with your hips in as high a position as they can be, while simultaneously being as close to the bar as they can be, right? We're trying to start from a very like extended position. So here is not going to be as strong for me as here, right? Here won't be as strong as here. So we want to adjust. So when you're pulling on this next set, you'll pull very slow on the way down, appreciate that position, and pull. You saw my quads kind of shaking because I'm holding that weight, and it's going to teach you that nice little position. Let's go again for 6. 1, good. 2, light touch, very light, very light. There you go, 3. Nice. That was 6, yeah. How do these feel compared to when you were doing them on your own?
Yeah, these feel much better.
Okay.
And it's like different than the.
Yeah, and just with those little. So it doesn't take a ton of like adjustments. Fortunately, she already had a good base. It was just fixing that hand position and conceptualizing where the weight needs to be placed in her feet, so that way her shins could be at the proper angle, right? So oftentimes you're still thinking, conventional deadlifters thinking mid-foot and knees forward when they're getting set up. They try to do that in a sumo stance. They're thinking here versus here, So that's what we're really adjusting. Let's add a little bit of weight. You can chalk your hands if you need to.
Okay.
All right, we're gonna go 4 to 6, whatever you feel good with. Still thinking about when we're coming down, a very light touch, you should feel those quads loaded, okay? If you ever feel like you're not using your quads anymore, it's because you probably dropped your hips too much, right? So come down, you feel your quads loaded. If they're shaking, that means you're in the right spot. Then when you come up, you are thinking about driving the hips forward, and pulling the bar straight up. So boom, you're pulling into the bar, okay?
Okay.
There you go. 2, 3, good. 4, good. 5, 6. That set looked great. You felt how your hips weren't dropping, right? That first rep, your hips started a little low, but then immediately into the second set or a second rep, your hips were at just the right position. So the goal will be to learn to set up in a way to where you don't feel like you need to be here.
Yeah.
You can set up to where your hips are at that optimal height.
Right.
That's why you'll see sumo deadlifters do this whole crazy routine, and some of them are just extravagant. But for most of us, what we're doing is, for me, I'm setting my lats in, so that way my shoulders are getting pulled down. I've got my feet in position, and I'm squatting down to the bar. And you'll notice when I grab, I'm trying to grab as high as I can. So I'll start with one arm, and now I've anchored myself to the bar. The other arm, I've anchored myself into the bar, and then I can just come up. Versus like a conventional deadlifter coming down and then setting up. Doesn't really work for everybody. Some folks it will, right? That's more of a dynamic setup. So some guys are going to set up here and then wedge in. If that works for you, that's fine. Other folks, and this might work for you as you're learning, is just a slower static setup. You've learned. And you'll pick it up, okay? Let's go again for another 6. Let's do 4.
4? Okay. Here, I'm gonna drink some water. I'm like debating if I like deadlifts or sumo deadlifts better.
At your height and size, I think you have the potential to be really strong in the sumo.
In sumo? Okay.
Yeah.
Is it normal that your weight is more in either sumo or deadlift?
It depends on leverages. I'm about 10 to 15% stronger in sumo.
Okay.
So if I'm pulling 635 sumo, I'm maybe pulling like 585 conventional.
Okay.
For me though, just the way my body accumulates the stress,
Yeah.
I can pull a lot more volume with sumo, and it's just it's a lot less taxing on my low back versus conventional. So is it because so I may not like quote unquote be stronger like sumo?
Yeah.
Because when I first started learning it, I was pulling less in sumo.
Yeah, that's when I
Right, but sumo allowed me to acquire more volume. Because I could get more volume, I then became stronger in sumo because I could just do more reps, I could do more sets, and the fatigue wasn't accumulating as high.
Okay.
So that's why I wanted to try it out with you, teach you how it goes. And we're probably going to go up a little bit in weight, because what we're going to be shooting for is we want to find that weight where the bar is pulling you forward.
Okay.
If we find a weight where like the bar's pulling you forward, then we know that's okay. That's kind of like where we need to go down a little bit, and that's kind of where we'd want to train.
Okay.
What you'll often see with someone as they're pulling sumo and they're still learning it is you'll see this number. They'll immediately want to regress to a conventional pull with a sumo stance. So you might see someone come in and at lighter weights, it's fine. But then as it gets heavier, you'll see this. And their knees will go back and their shoulders will shift forward. And then they're just conventional pulling it up. Versus keeping that chest sliding up a glass wall and staying in their quads, pushing the hips forward. So with sumo, we want to keep that chest sliding up a glass wall, pushing those hips forward. We've converted to a conventional deadlift with a sumo stance when now, instead of the hips going forward, they've gone up, right? And we're just lifting the shoulders, and we don't want that. So we want to find the weight where that happens. Let's go for another, just 2 on this one.
Just 2?
Yeah, because we'll go heavier. Excellent second pull. So one thing that may help you get those hips in the proper spot upon that initial rep is to think about what we call wedging into the bar. And what a wedge means is all we're doing is shifting our hips forward and our chest up. So I'm kind of exaggerating what a wedge would look like here, but if we're starting here, the hips too high, I'm shifting forward and up, and I'm pushing the hips into the bar. That's what a wedge is.
Okay.
Alternatively, if the hips are too low, right, the way we would want to wedge is extend it. We would want to raise the hips back because they're too low. So we'd raise the hips back to get back into that position, and then we can wedge in. So sometimes, and this may work for you, and I want you to, we're going to do 2 to 3 reps here.
Okay.
And then on the next set, we're going to try what we would call like a hip pump.
Okay.
And sometimes you'll see that where someone comes in, they set up, they'll pull their hips back and then wedge in.
Okay.
Because they know they have a tendency to set up too low.
Yeah.
So if they set up too low, when they pull the hips back, wedge in, the weight comes right up.
Right.
Okay.
So right now, do you think I like set too low or set too high?
I think on the first rep, you're setting about an inch too low.
Too low.
We're being very nitpicky here. Being very, very nitpicky here. But Katya and I don't typically work together in person. She's a remote client. So I program all of her workouts remotely. She submits video. So there's a little bit of a lag and turnaround and stuff. But this was important to her. It's important to me that she feels good with it. So we set up some time to work together. So I'm being nitpicky so that way we can get the best out of our time together. Let's go for 3 to 4.
Okay.
Okay, good. Better. Yeah, how'd that feel?
The second one felt better.
Yeah.
Because like I'm trying to picture like how you said like pump the hips.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, push it.
Yeah, and you should feel when you pull those hips back,
Yeah.
you're not just pulling them back just to pull them back. You're pulling them back and you should feel the weight pulling down in your arms. So I can do this, but that's not going to do it for me. Think about turning your pinkies into the bar as you pull your hips back. If I turn my pinkies into the bar, that's going to tighten my lats. You hear the click, and then I'm ready to go. Okay? Let's try again.
Okay. Same weight?
Yeah, same weight, 2 reps, and then we'll see about going up. Oh yeah, that's looking really clean. Okay, let's see about going up a little bit.
Okay. Yeah, I feel like the second rep comes out better.
And that's, honestly, that's pretty common for people to feel like their second repetition feels stronger than their first. There's a power lifter, Steffi Cohen,
Yeah.
and there's a great video of her. She pulls, man, it was some insane weight. It was like 500, 600 pounds, something like that. She pulls the first rep and it looks like a complete grinder. And then the weight goes down and then she ends up pulling for like 8 reps or something crazy like that. It's just like boom, boom, boom. So like you would think after that first rep, that was it. She only had like maybe 1 left and she pumps out a bunch more. But oftentimes what's happening is it is just that you get that first rep out. When you come down, the bar's kind of like in a better position.
Yeah.
So my recommendation would be on any subsequent set that we do now is you're gonna pull your set. When you finish that last rep, let the weight come down, let go, stand up, and just kind of take note of where the bar is in relation to your feet.
Yeah.
Because it could be that you're setting up a little too close.
Too close, okay.
It could be you're setting up a little too far. We don't know.
Okay.
But a good way to figure that out, especially if you feel like the subsequent reps are better, it may be just that now the bar is positioned differently in relation to your body. So set up the way you normally do, don't overthink it. Get in like 2 to 3 good reps. After the last rep, set it down, stand right back up, and just take note of where the bar is in relation to your feet.
Okay.
Then you're going for that position on every subsequent set. Let's go.
1, 2,
That was tough.
That feels heavy.
Yeah. And so I could see it. Your hips kind of rising and really fighting. So this is a good way to practice with
Okay.
maybe 255, maybe 235 actually. So let's drop it by about 10%.
Okay.
So we'll take 20 pounds off. It's important to remember that we are not pulling the weight off the floor. We're floating the weight up. So you're not pulling the weight, you're floating it up with your legs. And so those hips are going forward, the weight's floating up, all right? And we're just really trying to squeeze those pinkies into the bar to get those lats connected. Okay? Yeah, it gets tough. It gets tough. Let's give it like a minute and then we'll try it again.
Okay.
An important thing to remember is like you saw that those were that was a double and that was a grinder. She knew like shit, I got like 2 left, I'm gonna fucking stop there. It's probably what we're going for. Cool. We're gonna drop about 10% off the bar so that way she can get in enough good repetitions to practice the position, right? You need to get heavy enough to where you kind of know, all right, this is where my technique's breaking down. I'm gonna pull back just a little bit from there so I can get in good reps and really, really emphasize the technique and the position that I'm looking for. Let's go for 4 reps on this one when you're ready.
Okay.
Float the weight. Hips. Good. Float. Hips. Good. Float. Hips. Good. Float. Hips. Good. That was great.
Yeah.
You see how it's like two cues, right?
Yeah.
You know you're floating it to keep position, but when you're right about here, those hips need to then kick into overdrive.
Yeah.
How did that feel?
Felt good. That way it felt good.
That way, yeah.
Do you think it was like
reps.
a 7? Maybe
More. Honestly, it looked like a 5 to me.
Oh, okay.
It looked like you had about another good 5 repetitions left in you.
Yeah, that one felt good.
Yeah, like you would have definitely gotten like 6 reps without stopping, probably would have needed a reset and gotten like 2 more, and then like really had to work for that last one. That looked like an RPE 5.
Okay.
So that looked good. That's 235? 235, yeah.
I'm happy with it.
Yeah, 235 for a totally different position compared to when she's pulling like 395 for singles. This is beltless and stuff too. So usually she puts like a belt on when she's getting a little bit heavier. One thing to be mindful of with sumo is conventional deadlifters will typically get their belt on really, really tight. Now the thing with sumo is sometimes a really tight belt can actually keep you from being able to get into the position that you're looking for. So it's okay to experiment. Like if you're experimenting going from conventional to sumo, and you have like a lever belt or you have a prong belt, like experiment with your normal tightness, but then you can also experiment with like 1 or 2 notches looser, and then just see like if that allows that like that wedging, that flexibility that you need, versus when you're here and you're just doing this, because you need a little bit more flexibility in order to get into that wedged position. Do you have any questions on the sumo or anything like that?
No, I know like once I get to deadlifts, like once I do get to 315, I do put the belt on. Like this one, do you think it might be like the same?
So I like putting my belt on at around 50% of whatever I know my kind of max would be.
Okay.
So like for us looking at this, if you were pulling for a single, I think like just grinding it up, you could probably get like 275.
Okay.
So I would say maybe, yeah, like 155 or something like that. You'd probably want to put your belt on and start practicing,
Okay.
And I like trying to get, if I'm going to wear a belt for a movement, I try getting my belt on as early as possible in the warm-ups. That way there's no surprises for me as I get to the heavier weights.
Okay.
So like, yeah, if I'm going to squat for like 450, I'm wearing my belt at like 225.
Right.
So, something like that.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions outside of belts or anything like that? Do you want to run another set?
Yeah.
Okay,
I'll
let's
do
go
one more
again.
set.
Remember the cues we're looking for is it's float, hips, okay?
Okay.
And then we're gonna see where your foot position is after the last rep.
Okay. Baby, are you gonna count?
I would looking from here, scooch a tad bit closer. Yeah, let's see how that feels.
Okay.
And then we're sitting to the outside of the feet.
You ready, baby?
Good. Float hips. Yeah. 3, good. Legs, 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 legs. That was good. You felt that last one, you just kind of hinged it up with your hand. So that's probably, honestly, just your quads are not used to doing that much work, right? So like as your quads get stronger, you're not going to want to try to shift into the glutes and the hamstrings as much. You're going to be able to stay with the quads, okay? And that's what I mean by sometimes like you might have the potential to be stronger in sumo, it's just not there yet, and that's just because like these muscles haven't necessarily developed to like maintain that position.
Right.
But as you get strong, and you got like massive quads, so like And you got a big squat too. What do you squat? You're squatting like 345?
Yeah, 345. Yeah.
Yeah. So like for Katya to be squatting like 345 and deadlifting like 395, that's close enough to tell us like maybe she might be stronger with sumo. Because to me, for most people, it seems like sumo is a bit more quad dominant versus the conventional deadlift. You are using the quads to like initially break, but then it's a lot of glute hamstring that helps with that lockout.
Yeah.
So when we're here, there's a little bit more knee flexion and we're staying in those quads a little bit longer to get it like initially off the floor. So we might be able to take advantage of like, you know, some really big muscles that have developed.
Right.
So we'll see how it goes. You have any other questions?
No, I think that's it.
Good job today.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Like and subscribe.